A lot of Morrowind's dungeons that have no specific quests attached to them are nothing special. Just a short cave with a few random enemies or an ancestral tomb among many, but nothing much to get too excited about. But that is also why there are some dungeons that stand out. This is a bit of a contrast with Oblivion and Skyrim, where more or less every dungeon is a complete experience. Which is good if you like dungeon delving, but it also means that the different dungeons kinda melt together in your head, as the special ones don't stand out as much. If we're talking about specific types of dungeons that I like, then I'd have to point out 3. Smuggler caves are not very special in their appearance, but they often contain a lot of box containers, which can contain some nice stuff. Nice stuff like skooma, dwemer gear, potions, enchanted items, and the thing that I appreciate the most out of them, soul gems. Particularly if it's grand soul gems. Back when I didn't know that there is a merchant that sells those, this was my source of grand soul gems. Of course, they don't appear at the lowest levels. The contents of boxes are randomized and level scaled, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Another type of dungeons I like are Dunmer strongholds. Each of them has multiple floors. Not all of them are winners, and the enemies range from smugglers to orcs to Dagoth cultists, but I like them all the same. I've been thinking of putting my player home in one of them for a while, and if I did I would have plenty of space for everything. The third dungeon type is Dwemer ruins. There is something magical about those. It doesn't help that a lot of important dungeons are Dwemer ruins. All of the places you need to visit on Red Mountain, the first main quest dungeon, the places Edwina sends you for Dwemer blueprints, and even the Dwemer ruin beneath the statue in Mournhold Plaza. I don't like them nearly as much in Skyrim, maybe due to the fact that I don't like Falmer enemies, and those are very often in Skyrim's Dwemer ruins. Anyway, so Smuggler Caves, Dunmer Strongholds and Dwemer Ruins are my favorite dungeon types. But if we're talking about individual dungeons, there are a few names that come to mind. Firstly, there's that ancestral tomb that includes the Nord burial beneath it. At first, the tomb appears as nothing special, but there's a door with a maximum difficulty lock. Then a very long staircase. After that, a maze, and then finally, the treasure. Even in the room with the loot, there is some non-obvious extra stuff to be found if you look around. A pretty good surprise if you stumble upon it. There is a side quest linked to it, but really it just gives you the key. You can just unlock it yourself if you have a locksplitter scroll. If we're talking about main quest dungeons, my favorite would be Kogorun. It's a Dunmer stronghold that's disconnected from the Propylon Index network, and it houses the 6th house. There's several buildings, though only one leads to the main dungeon, and there's a lot of good loot in it, some of it in places that are away from where you're supposed to be going. To actually find the object you're looking for, the Shadow Shield, that is, you have to go underwater to get to the right section. I remember having a bit of trouble finding the way forward because I assumed that the parts that lead underwater just didn't lead anywhere. It's a bit weird that Sul-Matul apparently made note of the Shadow Shield when he entered Kogorun, but failed to notice all the amazing other loot in the same room. Then again, the Shadow Shield is made out of Dwemer metal. It's gold, so it's the flashiest object in there. Oh, another thing that's interesting about Kogorun is that at the bottom there's an exit into Red Mountain. That door may be helpful if you're a vampire and doing Masterious's quest. If you haven't completed the main quest yet, it may be a pain to pass the ghost fence, but if you use the Kogorun bypass, you will end up pretty near where Spellbreaker is located. I used that route in my walkthrough for that quest. I suppose if we're talking about the main quest, the second dungeon that comes to mind is the Urshilaku Burial Cavern. A fairly extensive dungeon with many side rooms and a fair amount of good loot. And it comes very welcome after you've done a lot of information gathering during the last few quests. The best loot people probably remember from that dungeon is Magebane, but there's actually a few really well hidden Daedric darts in one of the burial chambers. By the way, does anyone actually use those in combat? 4000 gold per throw, and there is only a small chance you are getting it back. I feel like there are better uses for that gold. If we're talking dungeons, we kinda have to mention everything beneath Mournhold. It's so extensive and a lot of it is interconnected. The first place you probably visited is the market sewers, where the Dark Brotherhood dwells. At least I hope that's the first Mournhold sewer you visited. By the way, when I saw that thing about King Helsef training goblins, I thought it sounded like a stupid conspiracy theory. I didn't expect it to actually end up being true. It kinda sounds like the type of bullshit that Alex Jones would peddle. The so-called liberal left is training goblins in secret caves, and they'll kill us all. Anyway, there's market sewers, temple sewers, palace sewers, that Dwemer ruin underneath the plaza that leads into a cave that leads into a Daedric ruin. To me it's great, but I know that a fair few actually didn't like Tribunal too much. I like it better than Blood Moon though. If you ask me about a notable smuggler cave, then I have nothing in particular that comes to mind. It's kind of the same problem as with later game dungeons. But I guess if it's just a cave, then I'd point out Balansur, a cave near Gnisis. I don't think there's any exceptional loot in there, but there's a wizard wearing a skirt and Colovian fur hat in there that you can rescue. If you let him keep his clothes, the quest gives you 1 point of reputation. Otherwise, there's a bunch of Daedra in there. The scamps were the ones who put him into those clothes. They have a nice sense of humor, those scamps. Ancestral tombs are usually kinda boring, if they don't lead into a different type of dungeon, kinda like with the Nordic burial. Or I guess that tomb that leads into a Daedric ruin that contains Skullbreaker, one of the best blunt weapons in the game. It's both powerful and lightweight. I'm not too crazy about its appearance, but I've seen uglier, I suppose. By the way, why is there no two-handed mace in the game? Warhammers are lame. What if I wanted to roleplay as Kaido, huh? And is it just me, or is it like totally stupid that you can't use a spear and shield at the same time? I ignored it before, but after playing some Dark Souls using that combination, I can't unsee this travesty. Well, at least you can use a spear in Morrowind. I'm looking at you, later games. I have gone totally off topic. I guess if I am to mention one more, it would be the dungeon added by the Siege of Firemoth official plugin. That one is pretty great. A lich took over an Imperial fort and you have to retake it. There's also secret passages and stuff, it's great. And more importantly, it's free. It was never sold for $9.99 like some of the stuff in Oblivion. Like, don't get me wrong, Battlehorn Castle is great, but it adds a sour taste to your mouth when you remember that it was a cash grab. Isn't it just funny how they call them microtransactions, but none of those things cost less than $9.99? When I think of microtransactions, I think of the kind of money I'd put into a vending machine, not $9.99. When it comes to Daedric shrines, I'd suggest Alt Safa. You visit Ald Daedroth during the main quest, yes. I guess it's notable in its own way, because of all the ordinators that you can either leave alone or provoke into attacking by telling them that you are the Nerevarine. Alt Safa, on the other hand, is very near Vivec. You visit it for the Morak Tonk. The Dark Brotherhood, Night Mother, lives in one of Alt Safa's side rooms. You also go there for the temple. The quest giver at High Fane in Vivec wants you to bring him a temple artifact from Alt Safa's main chamber. It's one of the more difficult Daedric ruins in the base game. It contains plenty of treasure and 8 sanguine items, which is the most you can find in any one location. By the way, did you know that the Morak Tonk sucks? Yes, I was shocked too. See this video to see why. Actually, I lied, I wasn't shocked at all, because I wrote the video, you dumbass. Thanks for watching.